Welcome to Straight Science, everyone. Straight Science is an evening science series put on by the University of Alaska Fairbanks Northwest Campus in Nome and the University of Alaska Fairbanks Alaska Sea Grant. And tonight you're in the home office. Both Northwest Campus and Alaska Sea Grant, we are public servants of the Bering Strait region. We serve all peoples of the region. And the Bering Strait region, as we know, is the homeland and waters of the Inupiaq, St. Lawrence Island Yupik, and Central Yupik peoples. So tonight we have Andy Ramey and Christina Ahlstrom, and I want to give a special shout out to both of them, as straight science is not a new experience for them, and they are taking time after work tonight to talk to us again about the latest news and kind of what we can do regarding avian influenza. And they're picking a perfect time. Andy Ramey's done 4 straight sciences, different years, always in the spring, and we are super grateful. And Christina is coming back for her second stab at straight science, and we're really grateful. Perfect timing. We're in Nome. We have a lot of open water out front. Inland, we've got gulls flying around, and some people have already seen mergansers, mallard, other birds. And if anyone's seen any birds after this presentation, or put it in the chat, feel free where you are, what you've seen, because the birds are just starting to come back, and this is usually it is a happy, exciting time of year. It is, but we need to be informed just in case something else happens with our situation. So with that, we'll hand it off to Andy Ramey first, and then Christina Ahlstrom. And both of you, we're so glad you're here to tell us more about avian influenza in Alaska and in our region. Thank you so much, and take it away.
Thanks, Gabe, for that very nice introduction. Thank you all for being here this evening, especially given that I understand it's a beautiful night there in the Bering Strait region. It's also a pretty nice evening here in Anchorage. So per Gabe's introduction, Christina and I are both research geneticists, and we're with the USGS Alaska Science Center. Again, we really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you as part of the Straight Science lecture series. And today we'd like to provide a broad overview of highly pathogenic avian influenza, or HPAI, which is sometimes also called bird flu. So for those of you that regularly attend this lecture series, this presentation may largely serve as a review, though we hope you might learn something new too. So here's an outline for this presentation. I'm going to start with a very brief introduction of our office and also of our lab. Next, I'd like to provide some general background information about HPAI. Christina is then going to summarize detections of HPAI among Alaska wildlife and to present some results from recent research within our state. I'll then continue by conveying 3 things I think we can all do about HPAI. And finally, as time allows, Christina and I will take any questions that you have for us. So Christina and I both work at the USGS Alaska Science Center, and the Alaska Science Center is a federal office within the U.S. Department of the Interior. It's located on traditional Dena'ina lands here in Anchorage. At the Alaska Science Center, we strive to provide objective scientific data that managers, policymakers, and you, the public, can use to make informed decisions about our natural resources. So I want to emphasize that the Alaska Science Center is not a management organization, and we do not make any policy or regulatory decisions. At the Alaska Science Center, Christina and I both work within the Molecular Ecology Lab. So the Molecular Ecology Lab provides genetic information on the health and status of our biological resources. In the Molecular Ecology Lab, we conduct research projects pertaining to wildlife health and disease, such as HPAI, population genetics, and also environmental DNA. And we've been conducting research on avian influenza in wild birds inhabiting Alaska within our lab for more than 15 years now. So when we began studying avian influenza viruses within the Molecular Ecology Lab, the ecology of these viruses closely resembled what's depicted here on this very busy slide. So I'm not going to try to cover all this information, but I would like to step through a few portions of this slide to describe where HPI comes from. So not all influenza viruses affecting birds cause HPI. There are many types of avian influenza viruses that naturally occur among waterfowl, shorebirds, and gulls, and that do not cause disease. So birds usually appear perfectly healthy when they're infected by these types of avian influenza viruses. We have repeatedly found these types of avian influenza viruses in wild birds sampled throughout Alaska for many years now. The avian influenza viruses that naturally occur in wild birds sometimes spread to domestic poultry. And usually, poultry that are infected by these viruses also appear to be perfectly healthy. It's only a small proportion of avian influenza viruses that make domestic poultry sick. And it's these small proportion of viruses that cause severe disease and death among chickens and turkeys that we refer to as HPAI viruses. The tendency for influenza viruses to cause serious disease and death among birds, or to become highly pathogenic, typically only occurs after viruses from wild birds have been introduced into poultry. So HPI viruses that evolve in poultry are readily spread among chickens and turkeys. These HPI viruses result in the death or destruction of large numbers of domestic birds and are therefore very costly to the poultry industry. So, for example, since 2022, more than 168 million domestic birds have been affected in the United States alone. The spread of HPI from poultry to wild birds, depicted here with a red arrow, has only become common since approximately 2002. That is, historically, HPI was almost exclusively a poultry disease. So prior to 2002, HPAI had only been detected once among wild birds, specifically in terns in South Africa in 1961. Things have changed. Over the past 2 decades, HPAI has become an important wildlife health issue. The HPAI viruses recently affecting wildlife are all genetically related uh, and descended from a virus that was first described among domestic geese in Guangdong, China in 1996. That is, the HPI viruses affecting wildlife today are related to those viruses that cause outbreaks in wild birds inhabiting East Asia in the early 2000s. They're also related to HPI viruses introduced by wild birds into North America in 2014, if you remember that event. So, although HPI has affected wild birds for more than 2 decades now, the impacts on wildlife have been particularly significant within just the past few years. Recent HPI viruses have evolved that they're now readily maintained and dispersed by wild birds, largely independent of poultry. So, this is what's facilitated rapid geographic spread. So the map on the right depicts the spread of HPI over an approximately 2-year interval during 2021 to 2023. So since late 2021, HPI has spread extensively throughout North America, both via migratory bird movements and also through domestic animal husbandry practices. So within the US, there have been many mortality events among wild birds and wild mammals since late 2021. That is, there have been more than 12,700 confirmed detections of HPI among wild birds in the US, with cases in all 50 states. These confirmed detections among wild birds represent only a fraction of the true number of birds that have been affected. As per domestic animals, more than 168 million domestic birds have been affected by HPI in the United States since late 2021, including poultry in all 50 states. In a globally unique situation, the US has confirmed detections of HPI among dairy cattle. Detections have been extensive, with more than 1,000 affected herds now confirmed in 17 US states. As the number of HPI cases have mounted in wild and domestic animals throughout the United States, so too have the number of cases reported in humans. The CDC has now confirmed 70 human cases of HPI in the US over the past 3 years, almost all of which have been associated with domestic animal contact. Thus far, the HPI situation in Alaska has been somewhat less complicated and in many ways less severe as compared to some other regions within the United States. This is, at least partially, due to the limited production of commercial poultry and dairy cattle within our state. So this slide helps to summarize the current ecology of HPI viruses in wild birds and spillover hosts here within Alaska. HPI viruses are now readily maintained and dispersed by wild birds. HPI viruses have sometimes spread from wild birds back to domestic poultry here in Alaska. HPI viruses have sporadically spilled over into wild mammals. And HPI viruses have caused some level of mortality among virtually all animal hosts in which they've been detected. So I'm now going to turn it over to Christina to summarize detections of HPI among Alaska wildlife and to present some results from recent research within our state.
As Andy said, mortality among wild birds and mammals affected by HPAI has been reported to be sporadic and a fairly low magnitude here in Alaska. For example, HPAI has been confirmed among a total of 419 wild birds in the state. More than half of these detections have been among ducks that appeared healthy when they were sampled or harvested by hunters. And of the birds in Alaska found to have been sick and to have died on account of HPAI, bald eagle, common raven, common murre, and glaucous gull have been the most frequently reported species affected. Other wild bird species repeatedly reported to be adversely affected by HPAI in Alaska include black-billed magpie, black brant, Canada goose, lesser scaup, northern pintail, parasitic jaeger, Sabina's gull, and short-tailed shearwater. HPAI has also been confirmed among a relatively small number of wild mammals in Alaska, including 5 red fox, an Arctic fox, 2 polar bears, a brown bear, a black bear, and an ermine. And all of the wild mammals confirmed to be positive for HPAI were reported to be sick or to have died. For context, HPAI has caused numerous large-scale mortality events among wild birds and mammals at other global locations. For example, as part of a mortality event in eastern Canada during 2022, it was estimated that at least 40,000 seabirds died from highly pathogenic avian influenza. And in South America, there have been reports of mortality of hundreds to more than 10,000 seals and sea lions. Thankfully, there have not been observations of such large numbers of animals negatively affected by HPAI here in Alaska. There's also been no human cases of HPAI reported in Alaska. So I'd like to convey some of what we've learned through recent research on avian influenza and wildlife inhabiting Alaska. I'd like to begin by highlighting an annual sampling effort that we've been conducting in collaboration with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, staff at Eisenbeck National Wildlife Refuge, and with collaborators at the University of Georgia. Since 2011, we've collected about 1,000 samples from hunter-harvested waterfowl and wild bird feces deposited in the environment each autumn in and around Eisenbeck National Wildlife Refuge and the adjacent community of Cold Bay. Samples have been tested for all types of avian influenza viruses, including those causing HPAI. And this annual sampling effort has provided us with a wealth of information regarding the occurrence of these viruses in wild birds and the environment. And we've used this information to better understand how viruses are maintained and dispersed. We focused our research efforts on avian influenza in wild birds inhabiting this region for several reasons. So first, southwestern Alaska represents an important staging area for migratory waterfowl, where birds coming from both Russia and Alaska congregate during autumn. Second, Eisenbeck Lagoon and the surrounding area supports a relatively high level of sport and subsistence harvest of waterfowl. And third, through prior genetic analysis of avian influenza viruses, we found that this is a region where viruses may be commonly introduced from East Asia into North America. I'll highlight now some of our research findings from the past 3 years of sampling. In 2022, we detected HPAI viruses among hunter-harvested birds from this region for the first time. We detected HPAI viruses in 61 samples collected during September and October of 2022, most of which originated from northern pintail ducks. We also detected HPA viruses among samples collected from mallards, cackling geese, gadwall, American widgeon, green-winged teal, and northern shoveler. And genetic analysis indicated that there were at least 5 types or genotypes of these viruses in these samples. 2 of these viral genotypes appear to have been introduced into southwestern Alaska from East Asia. 2 other genotypes appear to have been introduced into the region from the lower 48 United States or from Canada. And then the 5th viral genotype we detected had not been reported elsewhere and may have emerged within the region through a process called reassortment, which can occur when a host is infected with 2 different viruses. During autumn of 2023, we detected HPAI among only 4 samples collected from waterfowl harvested by hunters in this region. And all 4 positive samples originated from mallards and northern pintail ducks. Genetic characterization of these viruses indicated that all 4 genotypes had been detected in this region the previous year. During autumn of 2024, we detected HPAI in 17 samples from hunter-harvested waterfowl, including northern pintails and green-winged teal. We also detected HPAI in 1 mallard found dead. And genetic characterization indicated the presence of an emergent viral genotype in these 2024 samples, as well as another genotype that we had previously identified in Alaska. And the emergent viral genotype we detected has since quickly spread across North America, affecting many wild birds, as well as much smaller numbers of wild mammals, dairy cattle, and humans. So you may be wondering why HPAI appears to have been more common among birds inhabiting southwestern Alaska in some years and less common in others. We believe one likely explanation is changes in population immunity. Population immunity refers to the proportion of animals with antibodies to HPAI viruses. Antibodies are produced by animals that are exposed to HPAI viruses and help them recover from infection. Animals with antibodies to HPAI viruses have some level of protection against reinfection and may be less likely to develop severe disease or to die if they are ultimately reinfected. Research suggests widespread exposure of Alaska wildlife to HPAI viruses since late 2021, which may have led to changes in population immunity. For example, here's a figure that shows the occurrence of HPAI viruses of 7 different genotypes detected across Alaska during 2022. And the height of the bars indicates how many times these different genotypes were detected. And the colors correspond to regions in Alaska depicted on the map to the right. And purple is the area of Southwest Alaska that we've been talking about. The timeline below the colored bars indicates when the viruses were predicted to have been introduced or to have emerged within Alaska. It appears that HPAI viral genotypes that were initially introduced into the state in late 2021 and early 2022 quickly spread throughout the region, as illustrated by the colorful bars on the left side of the figure. And in contrast, genotypes introduced later in 2022 exhibited much more limited spread, as seen by the shorter bars on the right side of the figure. And this pattern is consistent with extensive viral spread among a susceptible population, mostly lacking antibodies to HPA viruses, followed by more limited spread once many individuals developed antibodies and recovered from infection. We've also found evidence that numerous wild mammals sampled in Alaska had antibodies to H5 and N1 influenza following HPAI introductions in late 2021 and 2022, which is suggestive of prior exposure to HPAI. Animals with H5 and N1 antibodies included numerous red foxes and brown bears, as well as a single Canada lynx and a wolf. These data suggest that HPAI infections are not always fatal among wild mammals, and that some individuals recover from infection. Furthermore, these data indicate that some species of wild mammals, such as brown bears and red fox, may be exposed to HPAI viruses at relatively high rates at specific locations and in specific contexts. I think it's important to acknowledge, however, that these data may not be representative of all mammals across the state or even throughout the entire region where they were sampled. It's unclear how many mammals with antibodies were exposed to HPAI viruses, though scavenging of sick or dead birds seems probable. So to summarize recent research efforts on HPAI in Alaska wildlife, I'd like to offer the following 4 takeaway messages. First, state and federal government offices within Alaska are actively tracking HPAI and conducting research on this important wildlife health issue. Second, genetic analysis support HPAI virus introductions into Alaska from East Asia, as well as from the lower 48 United States and Canada. Third, HPAI viruses may be more common among wildlife in some years and less common in others, which may be related to changes in population immunity. And finally, HPAI appears to have been widespread among wildlife in Alaska for several years now, and it's unlikely to go away anytime soon. So I'll now pass things back to Andy to convey these things, to convey 3 things we can all do about HPAI.
All right, before you get going, Andy, do you want to have questions at the end? We have looks like a caller. Do you want to wait till the end, or do you want to?
If there's a question, a burning question now, I think we'd be happy to take it.
All right, might be for Christina. I'm not sure. Go ahead, caller. CB, I think it's you, Chuck. CBM.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
go
me.
for it. Go for
Hey,
it.
could you go back to the slide that shows the animals? I was just confused. I saw a bearded seal on there. Is that a positive uh, test result, or I've never heard of a bearded seal catching HPAI?
Chuck, this is not a positive result for HPAI. So, and
Okay,
the HPAI is depicted by the bars that are black and the combination of black and with this striped bar. So that's
okay,
the this. Sorry for the jargon. So this 2344B, that's like the HPAI-H, and the N1 is the N1 that's associated with HPAI. So these ones
oh,
that are highlighted with red are the species that we infer to be likely exposed to HPAI. So this bearded seal, it looks like one of the 2 seals was maybe exposed to an N1 virus, but not HPAI. And this NP is a common gene of all influenza viruses, like those ones that don't cause disease in ducks, for example. So it looks like this seal probably saw some kind of influenza virus, but not HPAI.
okay. Just making sure, because we eat those things. So
Yeah, that's a very much something that I think many people throughout the state are looking for. I think especially in your region and on the North Slope,
yeah,
detections of HPI among seals, because that has certainly occurred HPI in pinnipeds in South America and also
yeah,
in Washington, on the east coast of the United States and eastern Canada. But so far, to my knowledge, there has not been any confirmed HPI detections in phocids and seals or sea lions here within Alaska. More on the slide, Chuck, I think you asked a really good question, and there's something that I maybe want to point out for people is that these red fox samples were collected in your region. And so there is reason to believe that red foxes in the Bering Strait region had been exposed to HPI. All
yeah,
of these red fox samples came from your region, in fact.
yeah. Well, on your slide, you don't have a red dot on the global map for Alaska. It doesn't show the positive results for this region. And we had 3 in 2000, I think it was 22, that were positive Glaucus galls for HPAI, and those aren't on there. And
Yeah, this that map that you're referring to, Chuck, I'm going to go back quite a bit in order to track it down. That's a map that I took from an organization, just to show about the rapid spread. It's not a map that I put together, and
okay,
you're right. There's certainly lots of holes in it In Alaska, it's very much imperfect.
Yeah, that one.
Uh,
Yeah.
Certainly nothing there in the Bering Strait region. There are other hits in Alaska. And I think you know all about the lag time for the
Yeah.
one lab in the United States in reporting. So the samples, when this map was generated, I think it was probably had to do that samples had not been processed and reported in public databases at the time that this map came out.
Okay. Thank you.
Good points. Thank you, Chuck. I really appreciate your question. Your good points.
And while he moves the slides forward, I'm going to say thank you too, Chuck. I was scribbling madly down, what is NP? Is that, when I saw that bearded seal too. And so I'm glad you got to the question button first. I think probably everyone here was like, bearded seal. So thanks for that.
The NP stands for nucleoprotein. Again, sorry for the jargon. It's a gene of influenza that's common among all influenza viruses. So it's just a sort of general tool that we can use to see if there's antibodies to any influenza virus.
Okay, so bearded seals, and that's not a surprise, honestly, that they've been exposed to a influenza. That is a more common thing, even for the seals. We just don't want to see avian influenza. Thank you.
Was there another burning question that I saw? A hand raise, maybe?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll jump back in and maybe wrap up this presentation and then take additional questions if there's other good questions that come up. So at this point, I'd like to maybe offer some ideas regarding things that we can all do about HPAI as it continues to affect wildlife here in Alaska. As Christina mentioned, I don't think there's any indication that HPAI is going to be going away anytime soon. And so therefore, I want to start by being clear and upfront that there's nothing that you nor I nor anyone can do to stop the occurrence and spread of HPAI among wildlife. However, I think we can all choose to be informed, to be prepared, and to take action when there are additional detections of HPAI in Alaska, or if we witness wildlife that we suspect might be infected. So let's take a few minutes to talk about each of those points. So the first thing we can do about HPAI is to be informed. So you're doing this right now. By listening to this presentation, you're going to be able to make more informed choices about your working, harvest, cleaning, and cooking practices based on your perceptions of risk. You're also going to be able to make more informed choices about how you might respond if you witness wildlife that you believe might be affected by HPAI. So identifying wildlife that is potentially affected by HPAI is not always straightforward. Some animals, such as ducks, may appear perfectly healthy or asymptomatic when infected by HPAI viruses. However, many animals affected by HPAI become sick and may die, though this disease may have a variety of presentations. So the most common signs of HPAI among sick wild birds include a lack of coordination, stumbling, inability to stand upright, inability to fly, walking or swimming in circles, a twisted neck, and paralysis. That stated, any wild animal that appears to be obviously sick, that does not try to escape when approached, or that has died from an unknown cause should generally be considered to be suspect for HPAI. There are some great online videos showing example behaviors that have been associated with HPAI in wildlife. So these behaviors do not confirm that an animal is affected, but they're extremely suspect and the types of behaviors that I'd encourage you to look for and to report. So let's have a look at a few examples. So I want to provide some forewarning. These videos show animals that are sick and they may not be particularly comfortable to watch. So if you prefer not to see short videos of sick animals for the purposes of better understanding what you might encounter in the field, I encourage you to please turn off your monitor or at least look away from your screen for the next few minutes. So bear with me as I try to get these videos to play. So this first video I'm going to show was made in the Bering Strait region near Golovin in May of 2022. and was shared on the Leo Network by Hunter Gray and Gay Sheffield. And swimming in circles, as displayed by the Brent goose that's going to be shown in this video, has repeatedly been associated with HPAI affected birds. So this next video I'm going to play is of a bald eagle in the Seattle area, and it was posted to YouTube by Kirsty Mull, an urban conservation specialist. So this eagle had poor coordination and wasn't able to fly. Again, these are commonly reported signs for HPAI affected birds. So the third video I'm going to show is of a sick bald eagle that was posted to Facebook by Who's Woods Raptor Center. So the eagle in this video was encountered in Iowa and was ultimately confirmed to be affected by HPAI. So this eagle displayed a twisted neck and was readily approached. Again, these are signs suggestive of HPAI infection. And the last video I'm going to play was again posted to YouTube. And this video shows 6 sea lions in Argentina that were suspected to be affected by HPAI. Signs of HPAI among affected marine mammals include lethargy, difficulty breathing, and ocular or nasal discharge. And these animals may also display a lack of coordination. They might exhibit tremors and be readily approached. That's the end of the videos for anybody that turned away from the screen. I promise not to show any more sick animals here this evening. If you would like to obtain additional information about recent HPAI detections in wild and domestic animals within the United States, I want to direct you to a USDA website where you can find a comprehensive list of all USDA laboratory confirmed detections online. And if you'd like to become more informed regarding human health and safety on account of HPAI, please consult the CDC website. If you are a hunter or if you help to process wildlife that has been harvested, the USDA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife have issued guidance regarding steps that can be taken to reduce the risk of HPAI to human and domestic animal health. Suggestions offered by these agencies include disinfecting knives, equipment, and work surfaces that were in contact with wildlife during butchering, as well as cooking meat to an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, the USDA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife guidance for hunters can be found online. So once you've become informed about HPAI and wildlife, the next thing you can do is to be prepared. If you work for an agency or tribal entity, you might check to see if your organization has an HPAI response plan. And if so, you might familiarize yourself with this document. If you're not associated with an organization with a response plan, I encourage you to develop your own personal HPAI response plan. Your personal response plan will help guide what you will do if there are additional detections of HPAI within your region, or if there is unusual mortality that could be on account of HPAI. So to clarify, I'm not proposing that you develop a manual like those depicted on the left side of the slide. Rather, I'm suggesting you consider your options for modifying your current practices as represented by images on the right. So for example, is there anything about your practices at work or in butchering or preparing harvested animals that you think may help to lower your risk of being exposed to HPAI or the risk of spreading HPAI to other areas? Have you carefully considered your practices for washing your hands, your knives, your work surfaces, your equipment, and even your rubber boots following the harvest and processing of animals? Do you have a plan if you observe sick or dead wildlife? Per the latter, I encourage everyone to consider reporting their observations of sick and dead animals. Your observations may help to raise situational awareness in your community and may help to guide organizational response. So when reporting sick and dead wildlife, it's extremely helpful to include the date and time, the specific location, the species affected, and the number of animals that appear sick and that have died. Taking photos or videos with your phone can be extremely helpful for documenting what you observe. Speaking of photos, please consider taking a photo of this slide and adding these reporting numbers to your contacts. So to report sick and dead wild birds, please call the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Alaska Sick and Dead Bird Hotline. Observations may also be reported to the LEO network. If you report sick or dead wild mammals, please contact the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. If you're unsure on who to contact, or if you're having problems reporting observations from the Bering Strait region, please contact Gay or Chuck. Gay and Chuck have been extremely helpful with HPAI response since these latest outbreaks began and are champions for your region. So once you're satisfied that you've become informed about HPAI, and after you've prepared your personal response plan, you're now going to be ready to take action. So I encourage you to use information about HPAI from credible sources, such as those that we mentioned today, to make informed choices about your work, harvest, cleaning, cooking, and reporting practices. Also, please remember that reporting your observations of sick and dead wildlife may ultimately help others in your community, within your region, and throughout Alaska to make more informed decisions themselves. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention, and Christina and I would now be happy to answer any additional questions.
All right. Well, I see your hand, Chuck. 1 second. We want to say thank you to Christina and Andy for joining us tonight before they start auguring in on the questions. And this is a good time. If you haven't thought of your question yet, first thing you should always think to do is to say thank you. Show some love for our speakers in the chat box, because it's never easy to be a public speaker. And they're taking time after work on their busy schedule to make the point to talk to us out here in the Bering Strait region, for which we are very grateful to have you guys answer questions and get us up to speed. So with that, Chuck, if you're ready to go,
Yep.
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I really appreciate this. Is an awesome presentation. I just wanted to say this, that the way we hunt, subsistence hunt, is it's almost impossible for us to isolate if there's an infection. I'm messing up the words, but what I'm saying is it's impossible for us to completely sanitize our boat, our hunting equipment, and all of that. But having said that, I would like to make a recommendation to all subsistence hunters that number one, the first step after butchering your animal is to wash your knives, your boots, your clothing with salt water, as clean as possible, obviously without cutting yourself on a knife. And then you can wipe it down with those disinfectant wipes from the store. I don't know if you can afford them, but um, that's about all we can do as far as sanitizing. You'd have to go hunting to understand what I'm talking about with us, because some days we come home covered in blood, and that's nowadays that's something we have to worry about. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks, Chuck, for your comments, and I absolutely appreciate what you're saying. I'm an avid bird hunter myself, and I appreciate that things sometimes get messy, and you know, disposable PPE is expensive and maybe not available, likely not available in many communities. So I think people have to adapt and be practical.
Yeah.
One thing I remember talking with some participants in the recent HPI training that I know you attended, and maybe even we talked about it, was that I think one piece of equipment that I see commonly in Alaska used that might be helpful when it comes to trying to be as clean as possible after butchering and reducing exposure is folks often have like Helly Hansen rain gear or Grundon's rain gear or something similar that is an impermeable rain gear that can be washed off after butchering, and it may be easier to clean than some other types of clothing. So like that's maybe an example of something that I don't have specific recommendations, but if people are really trying to think about what they have available to them, there might be some options that are easier to clean and easier and better at, for minimizing exposure to fluids of animals during the butchering process. But I wholeheartedly understand what you're saying, that, hunting a long way from where you live and where there's maybe more resources, being in the field, there's maybe serious limitations in what a person's able to do.
Yeah, I totally agree, and thank you.
All right. Well, we have some good chats, comments, and also I think we have someone calling in from, thank you for the great presentation. I hope we can share information and experience between Eastern Asian countries. We're all about that, and Alaska, as we are on the same flyway. So thank you for that, Simba.
I have one, Gay.
Okay, we've got Rob. Rob's got his hand up.
Oh, OPEC says better things than I do.
Okay, OPEC, you've got the go ahead. You got the green light. Go for it.
Oh, okay. I'm just wondering how many communities. I know I didn't hear it in this presentation that there. I know you've collected samples from a part of maybe the western region was where you collect samples from. It didn't stress where these bird samples were collected to test for HPAI. But it brought to my thinking that it is harvest season for a lot of the coastal communities, and then excuse me, and then for us too as well. So even we're gonna harvest ducks, maybe not, and of course we get all the seabirds. So now I'm just wondering, are there, or is it in the air, or a discussion for these tribal communities to get some type of training, or training to use equipment to do collections, or training to approach and do the collections, or appoint a member in the community to help collect and ship the bird samples to either Gay or Chuck? That was a long one, I know.
That was a very good one, though. Christina, do you want to take this one, or should I?
I think, given your recent experience at the training workshop, I think I'll leave it to you.
Okay, I'll take first stab, and please chime in with anything I missed. So OPIC, that's a great suggestion, and something that I think is being actively discussed. So the Native American Fish and Wildlife Association just a week or two ago hosted a HPI training here in Anchorage, and it was extremely well attended. It was limited to 20 folks. Chuck here on the phone was there, and it was a 2-day training where there was lots of discussion material, such as a presentation very similar to this, about kind of the background of HPI. Dr. Kimberly Beckman, who I think is on the line, made a nice presentation too. Dr. Joe McLaughlin talked about human health, etc. And then on day 2, there was instruction on donning and doffing PPE and sampling of birds, swabbing, some discussion about how samples are tested, etc. During that training, the suggestion came up, I think, multiple times that it would be nice to have similar trainings in communities throughout the state. And so I think that was something the Native American Fish and Wildlife Association was interested in pursuing. I haven't, this was very recent, so I haven't heard any action on that, but it's only very recent, so I suspect that might be forthcoming. I think that would probably be the best organization to reach out if you had specific suggestions for that. And I do have a contact that I will try to pop that contacts Caitlin Dombowski's the person's name, and I will try to put Caitlin's email here in the chat so that you can reach out directly to her to make the suggestion, because I think she would be receptive to that.
Okay, that sounds very helpful. I know Gay is thinking some stuff in her head right now. I can feel it. So I'm just thinking, hearing a presentation like this for the first time, and absorbing all this information, I know it's really important for the community members who are harvesting to, be ready to be a part of sample collections, if you may. And, Diamond is willing to be a part of any sampling, but I guess I can work right away with Gay. She probably will direct me to the right people. So yeah, it's good. Thank you very much.
All right. And actually, Rob and Chuck, thanks for being patient. I'm going to drop in the, and we thank you, Andy and Christina, for your outreach materials. We've been working, getting ready for the region. We have an updated version for the Bering Strait region. We worked with U.S. Marine Mammal, with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, NOAA, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, migratory birds and marine mammals. And so I'll drop that. And it's not just Chuck and I. The Norton Sound Health Corporation, Office of Environmental Health, is also interested in being a place where you can report. And I would say reporting over sampling, honestly, just to be safe, unless you've talked to somebody beforehand. But I'll drop that in if that's helpful and or of interest. And then take it away, Rob. You're so patient. Thank you.
I think Chuck might have something more relevant than I have. So Chuck, do you want to do it? And then I'll just get in line again.
Sure. I just wanted to respond to OPIC's. I had talked to Brandon, my boss, about doing trainings in each village for, donning PPE and stuff like that. But Brandon did bring up a good point. First of all, we don't have the money to do it. But second of all, it's not our responsibility to train people to do PPE and to don it. So that's on the federal government to do that, and
that sounds the doffing and donning, that sounds like asbestos abatement.
yeah.
I bet you something, maybe EMI might have some kind of training.
Yeah, I would love to do it. It's not that complicated to do the training, but Brandon told me it's not my responsibility. Uh, it just you know, it's battle between if you do and you don't, and you know who does. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would be happy to train them.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chuck, for that. And OPIC. And we've been waiting. Rob, what have you got?
Well, thank you so much, of course, to Andy and Christina. So I'm not wearing my federal hat right now. I'm just kind of a spectator, but I do appreciate these Bering Strait science meetings. I guess, and then we've got Simba. So Simba Chan, he works diligently from the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership. I think Andy and Christina both know Simba. One of the questions, I guess, that we're kind of looking for is, are there protocols? So, and I'm thinking, now I'm putting on my seabird colony hat. What happens when a seabird colony, we start seeing these impacts to a colony, and what kind of reaction? And I know you, Christina and Andy, your regulatory hats, you don't have one of those, your research, but that's where, what kind of guidance could we give to our East Asian Australasian Flyway partners? If you have any, or links that we could, and I'm asking this from, this is a question that Simba had asked earlier this week.
You want to go ahead here, Christina?
Well, I'll let you describe it, but Andy just posted manuscripts that he has been working on with coworkers from across North America, I believe, to answer that very question. Andy knows this far more than I do, so I'll let him talk about it again.
So the link that I put in without an explanation there, Rob, is for the decision support tool that, as being this paper describing it, or the manuscript describing it, was led by Dr. Johanna Harvey, and it describes, I think, the scenario that you bring up there. If a person comes across a mortality event, they might not even be certain that it is HPAI. Like, it offers a decision tree about how a person might sort of navigate that. Like, should I respond? How do I respond? How do I start to assess mortality, etc.? It doesn't get into all the details of sampling for HPAI. I think that when you get into the sampling for HPAI and like the testing protocols, that kind of gets in the weeds. Like, how we do things in the United States is maybe different than how they do it in Canada. It might be different than they do in Mongolia or China or the Republic of Korea, etc. So it doesn't really go into that step. But I think the initial assessment, it does describe pretty well in this tool, as far as understanding the scene, the scale of the mortality, safety concerns, how you might describe the mortality event, quantify the mortality event, etc. And then when it gets into the details of sampling for HPAI and where to send samples, etc., that's probably a decision that comes down to the organization and the country one is in. Does that answer your question, or did I just completely dance around it?
No, that was great. And so Simba just chatted into there's a die-off in Hokkaido right now. And so, I knew about this manuscript that you guys are working on. So I think sharing that, and Simba, I know you're on right now and you don't have to come on camera or anything like that, but I guess that link is in particular, it's under review, but these are resources that our partners in the East Asian Australasian Flyway will be, seeking out. So no, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the plug, Rob. Thank you.
And that's an outbreak of avian influenza in Hokkaido?
Yeah, Simba. Yes, I think they're
Right.
having water. Yeah, I think these are. I don't know, Simba. Are you able to come on? I know
Oh,
you
yes,
probably have
yes.
limited bandwidth. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, yes.
Welcome.
Because from late March, there is an outbreak in seabirds. Like mostly auklets and other seabirds in Hokkaido, very close to Russia. And we also learned from the Russian colleagues that they also found some dead seabirds in southern Kyushu Islands, very near Hokkaido. And in the last week, our colleagues start to find some dead harbor seal, which also test positive of HPAI. So that's the reason why they are now working on this in Hokkaido. But since this is the first outbreak in seabirds in Hokkaido, they recorded, and so some of my friends just asked, if there are any other information from other countries, and that's all. And that I think that's not extremely urgent, but I think it will be it. But if you have some immediate advice and reference that we would like to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simba. And did you say, I missed the types of birds? Did you say the seabirds were auklets?
Auklets, mostly auklets, and some gulls, and then recently, I mean that in the last few days, extremely worrying is we found that some black-tailed gull also have also die of avian influenza, and for most of the auklets and murrelets, they are northern seabirds. Hokkaido is probably the southernmost range they could reach, but for the black-tailed gull, they might move to southern water, like Korea and southern China, and that's the reason why we start worrying that it might actually spread to other seabird colonies in warmer parts of Asia.
All right. Well, we wish you the best in hopefully that disappearing, and thank you for providing that. I do know we have someone from, at least one person from St. Lawrence Island, and one of the things that Kurill Island pops up in my mind, one, hearing auklets is something, and the other one is sea lions. So we just learned earlier that sea lions in South America have a problem with this, but the sea lions near Kurill Islands that are branded when they're pups and from their original rookery where they're born, some of them get branded by the Russians. We do the same thing on our side in some locations. And then throughout their life, you can see where they go. And we do know that the south side of St. Lawrence Island does have animals, sea lions, stellar sea lions, that carry that K brand, and they are round tripping from the Western Aleutians, the Russian Western Aleutians, up and down, and then right on over up to St. Lawrence Island. So those are two things that are. Thank you very much for.
Excuse me. Are you aware of the facts that speaking about the avian influenza in sea lions, there were cases in Russia, I think in Kyushu Islands and Sakhalin, I think 2 years ago. Yeah, I think that that is also what actually concerns us.
I had heard that they had sick animals, but I have not seen anything written. So if there's anything documenting that, that would be wonderful to get. And thank you for bringing that up and letting us know again about that.
I think they have a report. I have a paper and a report. Maybe I will send to Rob later. That he can forward it to you.
Wonderful, and thank you for joining us tonight, all the way from Japan. So we really appreciate your input and thoughts. Good luck.
You know, that's concerning to hear about sick auklets. I'm just wondering now, because we've never ever tracked where these birds migrate to. This is going to be a project that might happen if Trump doesn't take it away. We want to track our birds here in Diomede to see where they fly, where they migrate to. It would be good to track some other birds to see where they're migrating to, you know, so we have a story on bird migration, right? But by the year, by the season.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thinking outside the box. Well done, Opik. It's good. Any other thoughts or comments, or should we let Dean, who's been very patient, he's had his hand up for a while. Should we let him go? Go for it, Dean. No other comments at this time.
First of all, thank both of you. It was a very nice talk. Really enjoyed it. I like these types of interchanges. I'm going to take you down a back alley, though, on your study. A sick bird can also produce eggs. People harvest these eggs. Can they get the influenza from contact with the egg shell or from the inside of the egg itself? Has much work been done on the transmission of the virus into eggs? You can just say no, and that's fine too, but
If our speakers don't want to answer that one, I
that's
will.
an ouch.
I'm just trying to give Christina the opportunity to
Oh,
jump
okay,
in.
go
because I
for it,
feel like I'm
Christina.
doing all
Go
the
for it.
talking here.
Go for
No,
it. Well,
Andy-
it's got a good answer.
Andy's so much more knowledgeable about this than I am. So if you have any questions about the genotypes of avian influenza, I'm happy to answer any of those questions. But otherwise, I might let Andy take most of them. Thank you, though.
Okay, being humble, Christina. So it's complicated. I guess the simple answer would be that there have not been many or maybe even any studies about wild bird eggs and HPAI. There's just not a lot of information out there. That being said, I think it's clear that HPAI is often shed through the cloaca of birds that are infected with HPAI viruses. So the opportunity for there to be virus on the eggshells, I would say, is ample. There could certainly be virus on eggshells. So that is
let me
something.
interrupt you and just say,
Yeah.
so egg collectors throughout the region should be cautious with hygiene. That would be the information that you would say, watch out, wash your hands, wash the eggs. Okay.
All that sounds prudent to me. So I'm not making any specific recommendations, but boy, that sounds prudent to me. Now, I would also say that to grow viruses in a lab, influenza viruses in a lab, researchers do that by inoculating it into eggs. So into chicken eggs. So chicken eggs is like as happy a place as a virus can end up for growing.
Wow.
That being stated, I don't know of studies that have shown viruses from a hen egg, from a hen chicken into the egg. So I don't know that if the egg shell is uncompromised, if there's no cracks, no breaks, I don't necessarily think it would be likely that there would be a virus inside the egg. I think as soon as an eggshell is compromised, there would be an opportunity for a virus to get into the egg and also to grow within the egg. So that's maybe some food for thought, if you will. So summarizing, exterior of eggshells, I think that's certainly possible. Cracked eggs, compromised eggs, that to me seems certainly possible. There's not really a lot of information out there.
Just want people to be cautious. Thank you.
Great question.
Thank you, Dean. And I guess I would add, and stop me if I'm wrong here, Andy, it sounds like what we're talking, because people like to eat raw egg too. So it sounds like if I had an egg from a wild bird, I'd take care of my cleanliness once I'm done, and maybe not eat it raw. Don't know, because if it looks compromised in any way. But we do know that for any wild game or egg, my understanding is if you heat that meat or any tissue or an egg over 165 degrees Fahrenheit, it will explode. One good thing about a virus, there's not much good going on here, but there's one good thing, and you can blow a virus into smithereens by heating it. Unfortunately, they like the cold, so that's a problem, right? COVID, that was a virus. We were all worried about that up here with good reason. But you can explode that virus and deactivate it by getting it up to 165 degrees. So if you want to have fried eggs or scrambled eggs or a boiled egg or meat in a stew, as long as you get it up to, you know, I don't know. I don't usually cook with a meat thermometer, but maybe I should. But as long as you get it, you know, especially for an egg, I would say, isn't that the recommended? You will destroy the virus walls. Now we have a problem here in the region, as you'll note on that poster I put in the chat box. We have two problems. If you think there's a harmful algal bloom situation afoot, cooking will unfortunately not do anything for the neurotoxin produced by the algae. So it does get complicated and confusing at times. That's why we tried to put both on that little poster. But cooking, if you have any concerns at all, cook your egg, cook your meat. And if it's even in the marine mammals, if it jumps into that, cook your marine mammal, so forth. And it's not the way. We have so many good different cuisines for all the wondrous seafood that we enjoy. But if you have concerns that there is avian influenza, there is an out for that one, and that is to cook it. All right.
Hi, Gabe.
Yes. Yeah,
This
hi,
is Edwin. Yeah, I missed the earlier part of your presentation there, but can you explain what HPI is?
Yes, we'll let the speaker do that because he's going to get it right. Go for it, Andy. Good question, Edwin.
Edwin, HPAI is it stands for highly pathogenic avian influenza. So this highly pathogenic avian influenza is a type of influenza virus that evolves in poultry, but is now spread widely in wild birds that causes mortality among chickens and turkeys, and often among wild birds too, but not always. Sometimes wild birds can be healthy or appear healthy when they have HPAI. So these viruses replicate, they grow in different types of tissues that other types of influenza viruses don't. And that's what typically causes a disease and death in the birds that are affected. So HPAI, highly pathogenic avian influenza, has really become an important wildlife health issue in Alaska and across the globe since approximately 2021.
Okay, thank you.
And
Sure.
Edwin, I'll send you a link when I get this on the YouTube. If you can see this, you could probably get YouTube, and then you can catch up to where you are right now on that recording.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I was expecting to attend this, and I just had to remember and just log in.
Yep. And congratulations to all the goodness that's been going on recently down there.
Yeah, well, we'll keep an eye out here, about we definitely report our when we notice anything, different about our our observations. So we'll keep an eye out here too. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Edwin.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. We've got a lineup. Before we get going, we have 3 questions in the lineup. And how are you, Andy and Christina? You guys have been, we're past the 7:30 mark. Are you keep them coming?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. I'm going to put up a slide here for Edwin as he came in late to make sure that he has some contact numbers if he sees sick and dead birds that seem out of the ordinary.
Yep. And I'll also put Edwin in the chat, the sort of the regional poster as well. I'm hoping that is not stepping on any toes. You'd let me know there, Andy, if it would, or Christina.
Okay.
No stepping on toes here.
I took a snapshot of that if you don't mind. So.
Okay. Stand by 1, and I'll drop the regional poster in as well for you. Because you came in and it doesn't give you the chat backwards. Oh, well, I'll do it in a second. So with that, Chuck, go ahead. We've got your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the gentleman from Japan. That's my biggest fear is seeing a bunch of dead animals, dead birds, and unfortunately we haven't seen much of that, other than I think we're just seeing the start of it. I don't know if it's linked to HPAI, but what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, okay. This year we're having the least amount of ice in recorded history. Um,
Arctic
now,
wide.
yeah, does that come into play as far as your guys' monitoring? Because I know heat, you know, plays a role in the prevalence of diseases. Does it come into play much with HPAI, or is it something that we can, you know, not worry about too much? Like global warming, not necessarily heat, you know.
Great question, Chuck. I don't know of any clear connections about lack of sea ice and HPAI. I mean, we could certainly get something could arise that I'm not thinking about, but I don't know of any clear connections there. That doesn't raise any red flags to me that, you know, we should anticipate anything different than what we've maybe seen the last few years. You know,
Well,
obviously,
the reason I bring it up is because it's gonna get super warm. 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, um, oh no, 2023, I saw on Windy, water temperatures in our region reach 80 degrees. Okay, that's super. That's like a super heat wave for this region, and that was the reason I asked that question. I'm almost thinking we're going to have that again because, you know, the sea ice loss is related to heat, and does that play a big a role in how prevalent HPAI is, or does it not?
So this heat is actually, from an HPI standpoint, is actually good for uh, um, deactivating the virus. So I think all this heat's
Okay.
probably not good for a lot of other things. I don't know that, but I know that's certainly an ecological change. But from a HPI standpoint, if the water is warmer, that actually makes the virus become deactivated faster.
Oh,
So it
okay.
would actually maybe help the HPAI situation as far as
don't believe
the
that.
ability of the virus to persist within the water.
That, oh,
Yeah.
Chuck,
Thank you. Thank you. That was good. Yeah. I think we're gonna have another heat wave again, Gay.
wait and see. Anything's
Yeah.
possible nowadays. All right, there's a question in the, thanks, Chuck. There's a question in the chat box from Dean Stockwell, and he says, has the poultry industry developed any vaccine for the virus?
They have in the United States. The vaccination has not been a strategy pursued. There, and it has to do with industry. So there's with international trade, there's regulations where many countries will not import poultry that has been vaccinated. And the strategy in the United States, rather than vaccination, has been stamping out. So if chicken is confirmed with HPI on a farm, if it's a farm with 10 chickens or 1 million chickens, the regulation is that all the chickens are to be depopulated or to be killed if one chicken comes back HPI positive. So that's been the strategy within the United States. Up until 2021, that strategy had been effective in eliminating HPI within the United States within a period of say months or up to approximately 1 year in the case of 2014, 2015. Obviously, we have a bigger problem now, and so I don't know what might be coming down the pike. But yes, there are poultry vaccines.
That's good to hear. I suppose they're probably have something for people eventually. I guess they got to wait for something to pop off and then auger in on that particular, that seems like a Christina question, and then auger in on that particular genetic strain or whatever, something that pops off in people. It might be one of these, but so far people don't seem to be passing it around. People, I'm shocked, 70 people in the US. Wow. But is that what you'd need for person virus? You'd need a vaccine. You'd need to know what it is first, which brand of avian influenza affects us the most.
I believe FDA has stockpiles of vaccines against highly pathogenic avian influenza. It may not be specific to the genotype level, but I think it's broadly similar enough that it should still be pretty effective at preventing infection. But Andy, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
There is, in fact, a stockpile that's somewhat limited, and there is also efforts to develop further human vaccines for HPAI.
Well, hopefully we never have to open that box. I see no other questions, so I'm going to ask my question, which I've been around for a while and on this planet, and in 2000, I want to say 2009, I'm not 100% sure that's the right year. Now you're with the United States Geological Survey and you do the research arm of birds and other things. And I think it was the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. And in 2009, I mean, I was here and everybody, we had people, USDA people came here, and we didn't have avian influenza, but they were on the hunt for avian influenza. And they came up here and call 1-800-BIRD-FLU, bumper stickers, pamphlets. I don't know. People here may remember they sent people out to St. Lawrence Island. They sent people to Safety Sound. They netted birds. They worked with hunters. They did a I mean, I still remember, call 1-800-BIRD-FLU, and it was the thing to do. And we were prepared. We were educated. It's a go. If we see this, we do not want to see this. And wow. So that was really a great moment. I thought, well, wow, look at that. They're looking for this thing. It's obviously not a good thing to have, and they're looking for it. They've educated the public. Brilliant. But the question I get is, especially here in this region where they did an awesome job back then, is, okay, that was wonderful. And they were telling us, watch out, we don't want to get this. Okay, we got it. We got it in this region in fox. We got it in this region in glaucous gulls, and probably a whole lot more animals because we don't have surveillance and monitoring here. So what happened? Do you know why once we got it, and now we got it and it's jumping into fox, it's jumping into polar bear, and where are those nice people? Like, where's that? Is it just a finance issue between agencies or the government, or what happened where now that we have it and it's jumping into everything, where are those nice people?
In short, it's a public support, political will, and funding. What that all transpired from was a large die-off of bar-headed geese in China that occurred in late 2005. Believe it or not, I was around back then, so to speak, and I remember that huge effort that went on throughout the state, the enormous resources that were put forth for sampling for influenza, and of course, we did not see high-path avian influenza in North America in 2005, 6, 7, 8, and 9, when all that sampling was going on. And so I maybe part of the lack of the support for continuing such an effort was that it wasn't detected at that time. And so there was a tremendous investment of resources, as you just recounted, for no detections at the time. And so I think various decisions were made at various levels not to continue that level of support. And here we are today.
Wow. Thank you for that explanation, because it sounds
Hey, Gay,
Go ahead,
how
Edwin.
soon, how soon can like HPI be tested if like a sample is sent out?
Good question.
Yeah,
And
to be notified.
so say that Edwin finds a duck all shaky and whatnot, and then it dies in front of him, or it's a murre or something like that. Then he takes care not to touch with his bare hands and all that, but he sends it in, and I or Norton Sound Health Corporation or Queric or Sea Grant, we're like, okay, we've got that bird. We're going to send it to, and realistically, and Rob Kaler's still on the line. Realistically, what is a realistic timeline for us? And you can be honest here because we need to know. Our expectations need to be realistic. Good question, Edwin.
Thank you.
Christina, I know you know the answer to this one.
Well, I can say not very quickly. The samples are eventually sent through various labs to USDA, the National Veterinary Services Lab, and they're just getting samples from across the country. I think they're underwater, and their maybe priority is to support industry. So I think some of these samples don't get tested as quickly or results shared as quickly as we'd like. I don't have an actual time frame. I think it's varied widely over the
Months.
past couple of years.
Weeks.
Is
Yeah.
there a
Maybe
test? Is there a test kit you can buy?
Good
Not
question.
over the counter. And to get the confirmatory testing that Christina's talking about, I think months is a realistic time frame by the time the National Vet Services Lab confirms. They might have some preliminary results saying this looks like it's possibly HPI within a week or two. But I think realistically, like the confirmation at this point for wild bird samples is months.
So in that, if we swab a bird or get a bird, and we're doing it in Nome, swab it or whatever, and we send in the material or the bird, there's about if it made it to the top of the list in Alaska, they could ship that out and send it, and within 2 weeks we might know it's not negative. It's looking odd. We'll at least know that it's looking odd, right? It's a non-negative. Right? Is that right? And then from there, maybe then it gets in the queue in line at this U.S. National Wildlife Vet Lab for several months, and then it'll be reported back. So
So just to be clear, the laboratory procedures aren't, I mean, they're complicated. You need a sophisticated laboratory, but they're not ridiculously complicated. Many laboratories, including in our laboratory, we can conduct these same tests. But because HPAth is what it is, it's agriculturally and economically very important virus. There's only one lab for the entire United States that has to confirm every HPAI positive sample. Only one lab can do that. And so because of this bottleneck, it is what it is. And so I'm just trying to be open and honest that to get that confirmation, we're talking months.
Yep. Well, it's good for us to have that realistic. I would say that regardless of that, we should report what you see, send in a bird, take pictures of it, take video if it's acting strange, or any other animal, because we have several issues. And even if they stall a little bit, not a little bit, stall quite a bit, because the chickens and the dairy industry are paying probably to have front of the line treatment, then we can at least document, and we can make noise ourselves here as a region. And I think people here, the tribal councils, the all the entities we have, our tribal health consortium, you know, maybe that would be, we can make news of a die-off for
Yeah,
sure.
thanks. Yeah, thanks, Gay. I mean, that's exactly it. Document, report. Yeah, so Rob Kaler, Fish and Wildlife Service, migratory bird. But yeah, that's exactly it. Report what you see, and we'll do our, due diligence to get those samples.
Right.
So yeah, thanks for that.
You know, I honestly, they keep saying, oh, you know, you're underserved, you're underserved. Yeah, we know that, but we're also underestimated out here. And so I would say continue to report, keep reporting, and we'll do it ourselves somehow. We'll figure something out, Bering Strait fashion. So thank you very much for that.
Just maybe to
really-
note too that these, mortality events can transpire over a long period of time too. So if samples are collected very early on, a few birds are dying, this looks really suspicious, they get tested. Even if it takes months, it's possible that, months later, there continues to be mortality or it spreads to, nearby communities, et cetera. If those initial samples are reported, information's collected, they're tested, that might help your neighbors, if you will, the adjacent community. It might not give you the answer you want, should I consume this bird or not? If it was apparently healthy, for example, or, is this really suspicious or is this normal mortality? But if it comes back hot, it might help your neighbors that see something similarly suspicious 1 or 2 or 3 months later to make more informed decisions.
All right, thank you for that. Last question I had was, there was a movie we saw. I forgot about this. There was a movie that, and this is for you, Edwin. There's a movie that they showed what avian influenza kind of looks like in sea lions in South America. And one of the last pictures I noticed was the seal, and he's got this red, it almost looked like a red liquid going up from his nose, not like blood. Well, it could have been like a watery blood or some sort of serum-y type thing, but it looked like a red material from his nostril up between his eyes. Is the discharge from the eyes and the nose that you were describing as a potential symptom, along with a whole bunch of other symptoms of shakes and tiredness or approachability, is there a color to the discharge, or is there blood in that discharge at all coming out of the nose or mouth? I'm thinking, did like that sea lion bang itself? Was it seizing so? Or is that something it just wiped? Or maybe that's just, we don't know what that was in the movie, but I keyed in on that red material.
I appreciate your comment there, Gay, and I'm suspicious of that red material because I noticed that in that same video, they also
Kimberly.
used red material to mark the different pinnipeds. And so
okay.
that could have been.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that they mark the ones that they've swabbed, or when they're counting the dead ones, they don't pick them up or move them. That's how they mark them. The discharge in the ones that I have seen with pictures from the elephant seals that I showed in my talk, it was white and white pussy mucoid, was not blood tinged. I don't think it was. It looked thick and white.
That's
I would just recommend that you not use red color.
Yeah, right. That's probably, they'll learn that. But Kimberly, thank you so much. And Andy, thank you so much for those answers. So I'm glad I asked that, because I was like, well, maybe, is it supposed to be kind of, maybe there's problems going on in there, but it's understanding from Kimberly, it's probably like a white, opaque or white discharge. You'd kind of milky, you'd know something was not normal.
Yeah, what's really strange with this particular virus is in the people and in cattle, it's affecting the eyes. So it has a propensity, this virus likes the eye membranes, what we call the conjunctiva. So it also likes the mammary glands of cattle. So that's the way it mutated. It's going for the eyes. And for the people that were dairy workers, the only signs that they were showing a lot of times was just conjunctivitis. So they get pink eye. And it was from their pink eye that they actually spread it to their pet cats, because the cats licked their face and got the virus from their eyes. So in people that they know have gotten infected from the dairy cattle, all it's done is cause the eye discharge.
Kimberly, while we've got you, and thank you very much, do you know if the hospitals if somebody goes in with pink eye, are they going to test them for avian influenza?
I don't, that'd be
Is that
a
a
question
state
for
thing?
Dr. McLaughlin, but
Okay.
I think they're, the public health is aware of it. And if someone said they'd had exposure to sick wildlife or to poultry or cattle, I think that, or dairy, they probably would be looking at that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments for Andy and Christina? You're beyond we're at 8 o'clock. You guys have been on a marathon, and we are so appreciative that you've taken the time to answer all the questions that we can throw at you right now. So you're getting, I don't know if you can see, but people are so good now. I don't know how to do all the hearts and clapping and stuff like that, but people are quick on the draw, and that's very nice to do that. So with that, we'll probably start to wrap it up here. And I would say, thank you again. And Andy, Christine, if you can stay on for a second afterwards. I also want to say that our next Straight Science, we're going to have a little break. And the next one will be on the 22nd of May. And it's going to be the return of the bumblebees of Nome. So there's actually research being done on the bumblebees of Nome, has been done on the bumblebees of Nome. And the speaker will be talking to us. She just finished her work. I think it's at Cornell University here in Nome. She did her work on the bumblebees, and it's a really great presentation and very interesting. We don't often think of bumblebees, but they play a key role in our lives here. And very, very interesting presentation. That'll be on May 22nd. Please note, and this is also to Andy and Christina, because I wouldn't go this far in advance, but because this topic will be also talked about June 5th, we have the Center for Disease Control going to do a Straight Science about avian influenza, and they will be able to talk about the human health, wildlife health questions that we've seen. Andy and Christina have done a great job at not diving diving directly in there, because they can get in trouble if they start talking about human health a little bit out of the wheelhouse there. So we are going to get June 5th. Somebody will be coming in from the Lizette Duran, I think, from the CDC, Center for U.S. Centers for Disease Control, and she will be able to handle human health, wildlife health questions. And so we hope you all come back. And Christina and Andy, you guys can just sit back and ask the questions that you'd like answered. And it won't come at any kind of, you won't have to, you can enjoy Straight Science and not be worried about, she'll be in the hot seat answering questions regarding people and animals. So with that, again, thank you all for coming, and we'll see you May 22nd for Bumblebees of Nome. That's going to be interesting. Good night, everyone.